tensions between the US and Iran show no sign of easing. After the deadline for a peace deal formally expired, joining us now from Texas to unpack what all this means for US policy in the region is Joanne Cummings, former US Foreign Service officer and professor of political science at Baylor University. Welcome to Asia One, Ms. Cummings. I really appreciate your time tonight. So, was the peace deadline, Joanne, collapse, a failure of diplomacy, or was Washington always heading toward military action, do you think?
I don't think that the United States was always hoping for a continuation of war, because it was clear from fairly early on that we were using heavy weaponry at a pace that outstripped our ability to renew it. So there was that sort of challenge. On the other hand, I think that the administration did recognize the significance of some of the things that were in the MOU and thought that, well, we can just sort of skip over those. So in a sense, it set the stage for continuing military action, but I'm not sure it was deliberate.
And so how enforceable is Trump's crushing economic operation, how he calls it, threat against Iran in practice, and who actually pays the price?
The disruption to the world economy, to the global economy from the Strait of Hormuz not being fully operational has already hit a number of countries significantly. Iran, of course, for decades has suffered under sanctions. Doing more sanctions on Iran may increase the poverty of the many Iranians, but it's not likely to create changes in the government's policies and behavior. And of course, that is the ultimate point of sanctions. What this does is attempt to make other countries that are enabling trade with Iran liable to punishment if they continue to engage. Secondary sanctions are very, very difficult to implement, to enforce, particularly if one of the major players is China. How exactly are you going to shut down the Chinese economy without jeopardizing the American economy? All of these secondary sanctions have severe potential impacts for the American economy, and I doubt if they will go very far.
And with Oman mediating on Hormuz and Kuwait reporting Iranian drone activity, so are Gulf states genuine mediators here, or caught in the middle with little really leverage?
I think both. You do not have to have leverage to be a mediator. You have to be accepted as such by both sides. The United States, if there were an agreement that was resolved through the offices of other countries that was not actively negative for the United States, I think at this point would seize upon that as a mechanism to say we have resolved the issue. But you're right that neither Oman nor Kuwait can force Iran or force the United States to agree to something. What I think Oman is trying to do is to develop a strategy moving forward that will serve the needs of Oman, that will meet some of the critical requirements of Iran, because you have to have their agreement, and will not bring down the wrath of President Trump, but rather will provide him with what seems like a diplomatic path out of this morass.
And Joanne, based on your inside experience when it comes to policy process, so is there any real off-ramp from this conflict right now, or is neither side actually looking for one?
I would argue that both sides are looking for one, but both sides have political red lines, often domestic, that may make a rational decision more difficult to reach. In that sense, if the United States were engaging its actual diplomatic expertise, which it has not been so far, I think we could move fairly quickly on this. At this point, we've still got chest pounding and saber rattling, but that does not mean that people would not seize a diplomatic solution if it were presented to them. And this is where I see hope in the engagement of Pakistan and Oman and Qatar and other countries in the region.
And where do you see this going, John?
At some point, the other countries in the world that are being hit by harm from the Strait of Hormuz closure will put enough pressure on the United States for the United States to need a solution. And needing a solution is the best way to find a solution because they are there, that you have to be willing to reach over and pick it up.
Many thanks indeed for your time.